Welcome to Wednesday evening with Clear Mountain. Today we're joined by Rodney Smith. Rodney, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
So a brief introduction. America's Insight Meditation movement was seeded by a cohort of spiritual pioneers, including Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield, who found and studied with Southeast Asia's theravada masters and brought their teachings to the West. Apart from being a member of this first wave of insight, Rodney Smith helped prepare the ground in Seattle for Clear Mountain. Rodney Smith spent 8 years in Buddhist monastic settings, both as at the Insight Meditation Society, IMS in Massachusetts, and several years as a Buddhist monk in Asia. He ordained with Mahasi Sayadaw in Burma, then practiced for 3 years with Ajahn Buddhadassa in Thailand. He disrobed as a monk in 1983 and, after returning to the West, started working in hospice care and teaching vipassana meditation throughout the US. At the end of 2016, Rodney retired from a full-time teaching role after more than 30 years of teaching. He served as a senior teacher for IMS and the founding and guiding teacher of Seattle Insight Meditation. He is author of the book Lessons from Dying, Stepping Out of Self-Deception, the Buddha's Liberating Teaching of No Self, and Awakening, A Paradigm Shift of the Heart, as well as Touching the Infinite. And Seattle Insight has been a very good friend of us and really welcomed us. And we credit much of that dharmic ground to Rodney and have wanted to meet him for a long time. And actually, the first time when we finally encountered him was randomly walking in Seattle Arboretum maybe a year and a half ago. And this man comes up to us and says, are you Theravada monks? And we say, yeah. And he's like, I'm Rodney Smith. And we were like, oh, Rodney, we've been wanting to meet you for a good year and a half. So Rodney, so grateful for what you prepared in Seattle, the community you cultivated, and for speaking with us today.
Okay, I'm ready.
Great, there's your intro. So Rodney, will you tell us about your path to Buddhism and into robes with Venerable Buddhadassa? He's an esteemed monk in Thailand as well as Mahasi Sayadaw.
I was in my 20s and I became a spiritual convert through the book Be Here Now, believe it or not, Ram Dass's book. And it actually brought me to my knees. It was so impactful. And it wasn't impactful because of something that was said. It was impactful because I knew it was true. And so my heart opened in a way that I had never experienced it before, and literally brought me to my knees. And from that day forth, I became a vegetarian the next day. I closed myself off, and really from people I was interacting with, and I started meditating and sitting for hours at end, while also working as a school social worker in Cincinnati, Ohio. And that went on for about 2 years of really intense. I couldn't do anything else. I knew I had to do something, and I had no idea what I was doing or how it related to an aim or a purpose of what Dharma was about. But I knew I had to do something. And in the back of Be Here Now, there was a cookbook section, and I did, staring at candle flames and chanting and pranayama, breath work, and standing on my head. And just staying busy because I couldn't not do something because it was so impactful. I really see it as a kind of a slight wakefulness, opening to a wakefulness that I'd never experienced before. So then I practiced on my own as much as I could, but I didn't really have a direction. I had no training as to what I was doing or why I was doing it. So eventually that led to the Insight Meditation Society, the year it opened in 1976. And I actually stayed there for 3.5 years. Ajahn Chah came through IMS when I was there, as well as Mahasi Sayadaw and other renowned monks. And so I decided I wanted to be a monk. And Ajahn Chah said, I remember, it's hard to be a monk. I said, boy, I didn't think it was going to be easy, but that was a real warning to me that it wasn't going to be just a, cakewalk. Anyway, so once I got to Thailand, I ordained with Mahasi Sayadaw and stayed there for 5 months doing the practice that I had learned from Joseph Goldstein, which was really a Mahasi flavored technique. But after 5 months, it just didn't work for me. I was doing a lot of noting and, putting words in my mouth and noting what was going on in terms of physical sensation. And it came to me, I said, to get quiet, why am I using words which are just creating more confusion and more sound within me? And every time I would go to an interview, which was daily with this man, he would say, try harder. It wasn't giving me any recognition for what I was doing. He would just tell me to try harder, and I couldn't. Believe me, I was a hardworking yogi, but it wasn't working. It wasn't. So I left Burma, realizing that practice just wasn't right, but having nowhere else to go. I had no next practice to take advantage of. And while I was in before I went to Thailand, I went through India, and I visited Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he started speaking to me, not through the Buddhist form, but through his own Hinduistic form, is a Vedic Vedanta. But he really opened me. It was something I could relax for a while. And I really felt an opening there. And that eventually led to Thailand. And I spent a month at Wat Pananachat. And from there, Ajahn Chah came while I was there, so I got to know a little bit about him and from him. Just a story, the night we gathered, it was all cement, and a little sitting mat is not much. It's just a piece of cloth that you sit on cement. And he had us sitting there for well over 2 hours. You know how the legs bend back. And I was in such misery. And he knew he was pushing us, I was just new at this thing. And I remembered him say, it isn't easy to be a monk. And so anyway, then I went down with Ajahn Buddhadassa, and he said, don't listen to me as your teacher, let the forest teach you. That was such wow, yeah. And because I'd always been outdoors, but never inhabited or lived outdoors. And so living outdoors was a tremendous opening in itself. And the snakes, all in the scorpions. And I have stories that could last the length of this session. But instead of doing that, really, I just want to say how beautifully aligned I was with that setting. And I stayed there for 3 some years. But then I felt inside of me that what I had come to learn wasn't complete, but it was sufficient for the time, and that I really needed to be more interactive. And I've always felt that not as an excuse to get out of something, but as a calling for my next step. And there's a different feeling to either one of those, because all the other monks were telling me I was restless, or I was this or that, and that I was just trying to get away. And it wasn't true. It wasn't true. I knew and had practiced meditation long enough that I knew the mind and what was going on inside of me, and that wasn't it. I wasn't trying to look for a way out. I was taking the next step on my path. Now, during that time, though, I started having everything had sort of settled down and become stable, and I started having moments of insight that were coming at me. I use the image like a darkened stadium with flash bulbs going off, and it was like that. It was just, and it really set a tone for what my own path was, which was inquiry and really asking questions. And I said, okay, I know nothing, because I've been told what to do in myself for all these years. I have no idea. The wisdom wasn't mine. It was what I was taking on for other people. And so I just, I don't know anything. Okay, if I don't know anything, I'm not going to pretend that the intellect I have and the information I have is mine at all, because it's not. And so then I said, okay, but I know how to ask questions. And the first question I asked was, what is ignorance? I mean, I could have told you what the Buddha said about ignorance. I could tell you what all my teachers said about ignorance. I wasn't going to listen to any of that. What is ignorance as lived? And then, I just said, okay, I'm going to be patient with this. I'm not going to try to force it through an intellectual response. And then I understood ignorance. And then other questions would come, and eventually questions about the basic nature of self. And those questions all led to a wider and more expansive wisdom, really. And it was really beautiful to see how a person, when they take on their own path, how it opens and offers the fruit of that effort. The other thing I learned because of the Mahasi years was that physical effort, mental force was not my path. And I don't believe at the heart of hearts that someone can sustain any spiritual practice using their will and their personal efforts. It just doesn't go in that direction. So a lot of wisdom was coming up and on. But at the same time, I also knew that it was time for me to move on. And where I moved on to was back in the States as a hospice worker. Because I never felt I left the forest, because the hospice workers had the same, it was opening me. It was like, I didn't want to know what death was. That was not a question that would come lightly to my, I wonder what death. No, it was like, But it was such a beautiful opportunity through relationship to understand it and what it was and how it reacted in someone's body. And of course, my own mortality would come up in relationship. And then I started teaching, and it spread out from there. But that's the story in short of how in short was about, I got it 1976 to 1983. 8 years.
Well, yeah, I hadn't heard quite a few of those details. And I mean, also coming out of the forests of Thailand is kind of the father of the Western Ajahn Chah tradition of Lumpur Sumedho. And I was happy to see recently Ajahn Nisabo and I both have been reading your books, listening to your talks. And I was very pleased to see that Lumpur Sumedho, Ajahn Sumedho, had written one of the blurbs to your most recent book, Touching the Infinite. And your teaching style is unique, and it does remind me of Lumpur Sumedho in that you both use, using some of your terminology, is the language of now. So you make this distinction between the language of evolution and the language of now being this vertical dimension of the deathless. And you really speak well, as does Lumpur Sumedho, of course, into that, whereas most Theravada traditional exegesis explanation really does speak in this, evolution of cultivating wholesome mental states. Could you speak a little bit about why you choose to use this language of now and what effect that has on the methods that yourself and that your students take on in their lives?
It's a really good question. Over the years, what dawned on me, and it was a growing crescendo of thought and reluctance, is that I was wrapping myself in myself even as I was moving forward. I was using myself to get rid of myself, you might say. And it doesn't work, and you have to come in and self-examine who and what you are. And what I came to is that there's an essential element of being, an irreducible essence of being that is life. It's me, and it's the chair, and it's everything, but it's all of the same essence. And I said to myself, okay, so if that's the same essence, what is it that I'm seeing? I'm not seeing the essence. I'm seeing a picture and a house and a tree. It's because the mind is conceptualizing from what it wants and building boundaries that are not there and creating a conceptual reality that covers over that essence. I say, okay, well, if that's true, and I believed it to be, then the way I get to essence is to question the film that's covering it. So if you look at the film that's covering it, you see that distance, separation, is part of that process, is part of the conceptualization of reality that hides or seems to hide the essence. And so when I would probe that coverage, that conceptualization of reality, it was always open to me. I mean, like, for instance, time. Well, time is, it doesn't require a lot of meditation to realize that time is really the thought of time, and that the thought of the past, the thought of the future, but there is one pristine moment in which the thought of the past or the thought of the future can intrude, and that's now, because now does not hold thought. And so, okay, so now then, because if I could, what the essential nature of reality is, I have imposed it to be timeless, to be immediate, to be simple, to be approachable, not just approachable, but the very essence of who and what I was. And so, okay, so now must hold the essence of who I am, because I've gotten rid of the conceptualization of time, which kept me always moving ahead of myself or thinking about the yesteryear of myself. Now that's where the divide came. And I realized that there is a way to access the essential nature. I just can't use my mind to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. And that, after a while, led to a lot of stillness in me. In fact, because it's contagious. It's not just contagious. It's like when you're in a choir and they're carrying a perfect note, and you come in, and if you're going to be a part of that choir, you've got to raise it to the exact note that everybody else is singing. I find that the energies that we have together when we start talking Dharma have a particular energetic note, and the note is often associated with stillness. And so sometimes I just say to people, okay, so you see it? You feel it? Isn't it? And it's not, it's carried through this box here. It's not, and through, when you write, it's carried in the words. You read people's Dharma, and you can feel the energy of that Dharma in the written word. And so that helps me understand that everything, even that which I see, is all associated, affiliated, interconnected, and combination. And it's not even combination, it just is the same thing. So you begin to ask, well, how is this similar to my essence? Well, it doesn't look like it, but as we quiet, you can begin to see that what this is in my mind is what I call it, what I remember it being, and then what I label it to be when I see it again. And that's conceptualization. Now, if I'm quiet with that conceptualization, it's no longer lip balm. It becomes part of everything. It's no longer a separate thing. And then you begin to realize from the Heart Sutra in the Mahayana tradition that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And so that sets me in the right direction to ask the right questions, to continue to evolve into this formless essence as my identifying point, if I call it an identifying point, but that I can release the sense of self, and that which I have always been reveals itself.
Rodney, it's for those who didn't pick up on this, some of the qualities you named early on about this present moment were the qualities of the Dhamma, timeless, ehipassiko, to be, approached by, come and see, and apparent here and now. And so there is this correlate in the suttas of the Dhamma, which is here, which is the ground, the truth. And there's a tension in how you and Longpo Sumedho talk about this, as you said, point of identification or essence. And I wonder how you work with that. And in the Theravada, I mean, the Buddha was so careful to not give us something to cling to beyond the aggregates, and just kept saying, let go until you come to what is left. And I understand the utility of stepping into that quiet. And how do you conceive of that without rupturing the very important frameworks the Buddha put around the deathless as a goal to be attained that isn't necessarily readily accessible to the regular patujanas such as we are?
It finds you. It's not a hunt. It's not a scavenger hunt. I was using meditation as a scavenger hunt. I need more of this. I need more of that. It's like the 7 factors of enlightenment. You could try to collect them and nourish them. And that's worthless, because that's the self trying to accomplish its own self-building. It doesn't work like that. We've got the first and foremost object that we have to dispel is the object of self, is the sense of I. And I lived with that for a long period of time. And now I live with it as, it's around, but it's not like it was. It doesn't compel me to do something. And it has thoughts, not a lot anymore, but some. And so when there isn't that constant jabbering, the space of what I call formless awareness is what holds thought, but is not itself a thought. Now, okay, so when that occurs, there's no self that's thinking in egotistic terms. It's not like it's the space itself becomes quiet, still, simple, nourishing, completely satisfactory. There are no hindrances there, because there's no self there. The mind is quiet. So all of that is not something you induce on yourself. It's the expressions of formless awareness itself. And that has become my practice. So when meditation can either be a means to an end, which is how most of us use it, because we don't just sit. We sit because this is good for us and it quiets the mind and it gets whatever. Or it can be a sense of entering the ground of being, where that becomes the meditation. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, kind of along that same thread, in stepping out of self-deception, you say that the Buddha was fluent both in the language of now and the language of evolution. And then the very next clause is that, but really the two are like water and oil. And there's a Dzogchen saying, and I know you studied with Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, which is amazing. But this Dzogchen teaching says that for someone who's relating to reality from the non-dual, teaching from a non-dual place, are like nectar. But those same teachings can be poison from someone who's coming from this evolutionary stepwise progression. And in the same way, like teachings that are a gradual way are like nectar to someone who's on a gradual path, and they're like poison to someone who's kind of in this more instantaneous way. So how do you determine which vernacular you're going to use when interacting with the world or individuals?
This is really an important point. They come together, and they're not contradictory. So you have the stillness of being, and you have the evolutionary thought and all of that side by side. What happens, though, at least personally is that you don't lose the infinite in the relative. The infinite circles the relative and holds the relative, and the relative is what allows you to function effectively in the world and to have conversations like we're having. At the same time, there's a sense of timelessness within this. So timelessness holds time. It's not that time doesn't have a place in it. Oh, obviously it does, you know. We're growing old. What's that? But it doesn't deny the timeless. And I don't know what else I can say about that. They coexist. They don't even coexist. They're one and the same somehow, some weird way, because they don't contradict each other. And they live side by side. That's all I can do.
No, Rodney, I appreciate it. And I do want to ask about the process of death and dying in a second and some of your insights from that. But before I move on, just to put my theravada monastic mind at rest, you know, I love this language of invoking the Dhamma and touching into that, because I feel it when you step into that quiet. There's a sweetness. I think of the word grace. I think of Rilke's quote that winning does not tempt that person. This is how he grows, by being defeated by greater and greater beings. I think of all this. And there's a part of me which still wants within this conversation to clarify that just because someone thinks, okay, I'm going to be quiet now, doesn't mean they've achieved enlightenment. And that's kind of, do you feel like there's room for that distinction in this conversation that we
Yeah,
can...
I mean, it's... quietness isn't a journey. It's a statement of being. The mind is a journey. The mind is, you know, holds all the conceptual ways that we invest in it. But the silence, if you look behind the noise of the mind, you'll find that stillness. And the stillness is what holds it all. So it's not apart from it, but at the same time, it's not the same as being invested in the noise as a singularity. And that brings a different simplicity to life. Like I think most of us miss some essential teachings of the Buddha that when I reflect upon are like, that's the whole, like, don't invest in conditions. Okay, so that's like, you learn that pretty quickly in meditation and just around the Dharma scene. But that's the whole of it all. Because when you invest in conditions, the conditioned mind begins to interpret what you're seeing. And when you see conditions, that means the mind is actively portraying life as conditionality. And then the whole of life becomes something that's in movement and change and all of that sort of thing. But when that quiet is back behind all of that, you see the conditionality, and it's also empty at the same time. And I keep making that point because that's the way you see it at some point. And I know the prohibition about making statements about your own attainment and all of that, especially with monks, and I know that. But it also can spur that very process in others and act as a motivation. And it doesn't have to be an egotistical statement. It doesn't. It's just what the truth is for one. And just to be able to expound that truth for many people, it certainly did for me, is to call me forth into that very model, into that very essence. So yes, there's a distinction, but it's a distinction of conceptualization. It really isn't a distinction in essence.
Rodney, you quote the Dalai Lama being asked about emptiness and kindness and why he emphasizes kindness, and his response being, kindness is safer. And something that I appreciate about your teachings is that one of the ways which deep teachings on emptiness can be taken up wrongly is that it can undercut someone's morality, or someone can spiritual bypass and not keep ethical sense, just saying, oh, it's all empty, it doesn't matter. Whereas you've got a great phrase of radical responsibility or radical accountability. Could you say more about that, and how there can be radical accountability within this view of not self, of the deep depths of not self you're speaking to?
All along the way, there's radical accountability, and that starts day one. You just can't fool yourself. You've got to, if there's anything that moves you forward, it's the truth, and you're living that truth. And when things would come up and I wasn't living it, I would recognize that and I would admit to it. And that's hard enough. A radical accountability, from my point, is that you don't allow yourself, and you know it. I mean, that's the thing. If you didn't know it, then there would be no accountability. But when you're moving to the left or right against the actual integrity of your authenticity. And so that is what has been, I hate to say that because I don't want to make a statement that I can't keep, but that has been a driving force for my practice, is to be accountable to myself. And let me just change the word emptiness, because emptiness never worked for me. I never wanted to be empty. That sounded like some jug that you threw away into the trash. But what I did want to be, what I found out emptiness was in essence, and I think you can all agree with that, is incomprehensibility. It's incomprehensible. It's not something, but it is something. It's not what we know of as forms, but it is something. And that something is very alive. In fact, I call it the seat of aliveness. And that effervescent seat of aliveness is not empty, not in the sense of what we normally call emptiness. So I like that word better, and it's more inviting to me.
No, I like that too. And I think it's interesting how in the Madhupindika Sutta, the first person pronoun enters around the perception, what one perceives, one thinks about, and there's no pronoun before that.
Yeah.
And, one thing that I'm kind of mapping this onto is, it's interesting for me that you've learned to rest so much in that silence, and have also spent so much time with the dying. And for me, those feel like they must have some relation, in terms of letting go of the narrative of the self, of stepping into this kind of sacred space. What insights did you gain from your time in hospice work, and what advice would you give for those of us being with the dying?
Listen. Don't try to solve it. There's no solution to this. Being quiet with the dying is all you really need. The right words will come out and are expressed through your heart, because it's impossible to keep your heart shielded when you're with the dying. I mean, it's like there's a complete innocence in that particular moment, and to be with that innocence just opens you up like a young child would open you up, a young infant, because there's no need to protect yourself. They're not going to do anything. They're just showing you the way forward, and they're showing you your life as well as theirs. And if they would want to talk, I would chat with them and talk to them. If they want to talk about baseball, I'd talk about baseball. If they want to talk about dying and what it's like, I would say, I don't know, but I can. I've been with a lot of people have. Why don't you share with me what you're going through? I would invite that kind of collaboration. And it matured me. It wasn't, first of all, I've been with people as they've died. I have great stories about that, but I won't share them now. But the beautiful, I'll share one. So there was a young woman who had 2 children, and she was on the edge of her death. And so we thought it would be better if we took her and put her in our inpatient unit, because it was too complex with all the kids moving around and the husband and everything. So we all went over to the inpatient unit and put her in bed there. And all the nurses and people like myself who were around the bed had brought her in, and she was started to actively die. Okay, so she started telling us what it was like to die. Now, to me, it was like the secrets of the universe were being, were being expounded upon. She said, I can't feel my body anymore. I can't hear anymore. I can't see anymore. And then she tried to say something and died. And all of us were like, it's like the edge of a mystery that was unfathomable. And some of her family was around the bed as well. And every one of us, some of them had just lost their mother, but every one of us were just in this complete wonderment. It was so beautiful, and it brought us together inclusively in a way that nothing else could have. And it was like you were in the presence of the holy. And I don't believe death is that traumatic. I mean, because I've never seen it being traumatic. People really move through this pretty evenly. I'm not saying that a violent death isn't traumatic, but I'm saying that the way people normally and naturally die isn't traumatic. And there is a message that all of us have or felt that even after she had died, you could still feel her there. And that sense of continuity of spirit remains with me to this day. I'm sure all of us don't believe this is a single lifetime, that there's a way that the essence of us moves on, was not affected by death, and moves on to whatever the next alive possibility is, being dead. So now whenever I hear of anyone who has died, I spend some time, especially if I've known them, just reassuring them that it's confusing when you die, but it's not. Just settle down with that confusion and you'll find your way forward, basically. Yeah.
Rodney, very much on this theme. You've got a fantastic quote in the book Awakening about love. And you say, as soon as we make love an objective goal, we lose sight of the formless nature of love that surrounds us at every point. What does a life look like when it is lived within love rather than for love? Could you say more about that love that surrounds us at every point?
You see, the conditioned mind makes replicas of the essence of the expressions of the essence. That's the paramis. All the paramis are intrinsic to the formless awareness. And the way the mind, because we don't get out of formless awareness just because we have shielded ourselves with concepts, it comes through us. But the mind doesn't know what to do with it. So it makes a conceptual model of love. And so now I love you, and only if you do this for me, I will continue to love you. It has conditions because it's conditional. But in its essence, it's the isness of it. I mean, it just is. It's like, oh, whoa. You can call it forward. It's not like you call it forward, you just enter it. That's really what it is. And that's how the expressions of simplicity, it's the simplest thing. It's not complex, it's the simplest thing. And we keep trying to make it, worthwhile. Well, you already are it. So you're already the worthwhile needed to enter it. And so it's like, okay, just come on. We don't have to be afraid of this. This is something that will reunite us. It's inclusive. It's an inclusiveness.
Thank you, Rodney. That's perfect. And people can feel free to type questions into the chat. We do have a bit longer. Back to kind of a very practical question. I don't quite know what to say to people when they lose a loved one now. I mean, I can't really say I'm sorry because people die, and I don't actually know if that helps. I say my condolences. I'll keep them in my mind and heart. What are some of the phrases that you use that you feel are, caring, honest, and actually helpful? Because, honoring the depth of a loss, but also honoring the fact that death is completely normal, and it's maybe not helpful to make it out to be more of a tragedy than it is.
Mostly I express my deep sorrow for what has occurred. I enter there of grief, and we all have the remnants of our own grief that we carry with us. And so when you're with somebody who has lost a loved one, I can feel their grief because I have my own residual grief that I carry. And, I'm so sorry. But I don't try to explain it away and say, oh, he's got another life or she's got another life. I don't do that. I just listen. I just offer intimacy.
Offer intimacy.
Yeah, and because all of us, it's not apart from any of us. It affects all of us when someone dies. And I listen. It's just what I learned at the bedside, really, is that they just want to talk about it. They just want to express their sorrow. They just want to share in how important this person was to them, or whatever way they want to share. And I'm just there to receive that and to honor that message. Really, that's all. That's all. Especially, if I can say, when you're in a ministerial position, you want to be careful that you're not bringing that too quickly to bear upon It's safe for you, and it's an easy way to respond, but it's really not the right response that most people need.
Yeah, monk-splaining is generally not always a great thing. So,
No.
I mean, we can say things, but I agree that energy.
Yeah.
Rodney, on this note, I mean, not just for professional clergy or people doing hospice work, but you've got a great, you talk about different forgeries or different doppelgangers, imitations or near enemies of certain wholesome qualities. And you talk about, I think, helping being a forgery or a near enemy to serving. So how do we serve rather than just help?
Well, help's a model. I'm helping you. So there's a kind of pity to it, or a downgrading. It's not equal. It's not eye to eye. It's let me help you. And that can be a genuine statement in which there's no pity involved in it at all. Or it can come from a sense of being above and let me assist you in your time of need. The first thing that I suggest to people whenever they're in that spirit of wanting to serve is to listen. Again, listening is the avenue of heart contact for me. And if I can listen to what their needs are, helping will come automatically or spontaneously from that listening. And then it won't be a complex, well, what if I do this for you or that? It won't be a negotiation. It'll be an immediate and authentic and spontaneous way of meeting. And sometimes you don't do anything because whatever you do isn't really needed. I have so many hospice stories where, people, when they're by the bedside, they want to do something because they can't stand sitting there and being quiet, because to that they would be opening to the very death that they are witnessing. So they try to do something. Can I get you some water? Can I do this? Can I do that? So I was one of those people who were serving the dying. And there were three of us, two of her sons and me, from the hospice program, and we were around the bed, and she sent each one of us off to do a task, and then while we were all gone, she dies. Yeah. She wanted us out of the room.
Rodney, if let's see, I think first if we can keep you on, we usually would jump over to Zoom right now, but maybe we can keep you on here for another 5 or 6 minutes before.
It's your time.
Okay.
It's fine. I'm fine.
I do want one more death story, but before that, we have a question from the chat. My grandfather and grandmother were together over 50 years. My grandfather just passed away in November at 99. Any advice to help her cope emotionally other than giving her company? What can I say to help her deal with those times when she has to be alone and learn to be alone?
Do you know what it's like to be alone and lonely? We all know that, don't we? See, we try to fill it in too quickly. We try to fill in that space instead of letting the person dwell in that space for a while. They're not going to get out of being lonely because you're present and then leave. That's too quick of a response. That's a mental concept of trying to fix things. And I like not fixing things. Not that I wouldn't want to fix it if I could, but most things aren't fixable. And so I can be with her in her loneliness, in my own isolation, in my own sense of self-isolation. I can do that. But then I can also meet her in a more compatible, inclusive way if she would like to go that way. I mean, that's really Sangha. That's what Sangha means, is really connecting inclusively despite what is going on with each one of us individually. So that comes out of me too, is that sense of Sangha, of jointly sharing and experiencing together. And then a conversation unfolds, but you're not going to fix the problem. This is not a fixable solution. But the person may likely remember the connection that was there. The connection. And I've had many people tell me that, they have a room full of people after a death occurs, and suddenly there will be one genuine connection, and then the whole thing, the wake goes away, and she'll remember that one connection, that one time when somebody was not trying to offer her a way out of her pain.
Offer empathy or offer intimacy.
Yeah, but again, it's not really an offering. You're either legitimately and authentically intimate or you're not. Pretending doesn't work for me, and if I am finding myself somehow blocked from intimacy in that moment, I will say, this really isn't the time I can talk, and I'd love to meet you back again. Let me wait and I'll give you a call or something like that, because it's not authentic, and they feel it and I feel it, and it just doesn't work. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rodney.
You bet.
Would you give us, no, one more. Can you give us one more story of a death that was meaningful or which really remained with you after? I think so few of us have actual stories of that moment and towards the end of life. Either a beautiful death or just something of that nature.
I wrote Lessons from the Dying, and it's filled with stories. But in this moment, for some reason, because of the way I've been speaking and the way my mind has been, it's not coming. I apologize for that, but the next time we meet, I'll have several of them ready for you.
It's okay.
Well, one that you told in one of your books, which I don't usually tear up when I'm reading a book, but it was a child who was playing around on monkey bars.
Oh, God, yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you for the story. So I was actually a meditation teacher, and this woman came in for an interview, and she tells me the following story. She said her 8-year-old son was out in the school play yard, and he was going on a monkey bars, and some boy grabbed his legs and pulled him down. He falls down, cracks his head, and dies a few hours later. Okay. The next day, you can imagine what the other children treated that boy like. She goes into that room. This is the day or 2 days later, after her son dies. She goes into that room and she says, "Listen to me. I want you to treat him with the love he deserved. This was not intentional. And if you treat it as if it were intentional, 2 people die." I will not allow that to happen. And it didn't because of her intervention there.
Rodney, thank you for just the gentle presence and the stories and the wisdom, and for helping create a space for us here in Seattle.
Okay. Thank you too for being here in Seattle. I really enjoy not only your presence, but the fact that we're bringing some monastic presence into Seattle. It's needed.
We hope we get to run into you in a park again randomly soon enough.
I'll look forward to it.
So if people want to join us on Zoom, I just pasted the link into the chat. Rodney will be joining us as well for a more intimate discussion. If you can't find it there, just look at the YouTube description and there should be the link there. So
Okay.
we'll see you all soon enough. And Rodney, it's a pleasure. Take care.
You bet.